Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Bridge, the place of all connection where we share stories of love and truth that help bring us closer together as a people. My name is Maddie. I'll be your host across the bridge. And today I'm here with my friend Sophie, and I'm super excited to have her here with me because we have some uh, similar stories, similar in one very unique kind of way, and also different in many ways too. And I'm excited for us to have a conversation. So, as some of you know, if you've watched my first couple episodes, I'm a woman who lived as a transgender man for about 6 years of my life. And in my first two episodes, I share that story and that journey of what led me on that path and what led me here and back to myself as a woman. And my friend Sophie has a similar journey with identifying as trans and then coming back to herself as a woman. And we actually lived in DC at the same time. There was one day where we were supposed to meet each other in person. I don't know if you remember that.
Is there? I
Yes.
don't remember this.
um,
Okay.
it was a rainy day, and we were supposed to meet up with our mutual friend, and then you couldn't make it. But it was like this moment in time where
Ah,
I became aware of who you were, and then I think we became friends on Facebook, and at the time,
yeah,
you were going by a different name, and I was going by a different name,
yeah.
and then several years later, I just happened to see on Facebook that you changed your name back, and then you had a baby, and I was like, "Oh, wow, what's going
Yeah.
on with her?" And I was still living as trans, actually, when I saw you coming back to yourself, and interestingly, I had no
Mm,
judgment, I actually was just really curious. And then I went on my own journey. So, yeah, thank you so much, Sophie, for being here. I'm really excited to get into your story and what you have to share.
yeah, thank you for having me. I'm also very excited. And yeah, grateful that you have created this platform because I've been eager to share my story in a way that feels genuine.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, I see this as an opportunity for you to share from your heart whatever wants to be shared. Um,
Great, great.
I'm curious, where would you like to begin with your story?
Well, I think that, like you, I've got to begin in my childhood, but I don't want to spend too much time because I have a lot of stories that I could dive into. So I'll try and make it as brief as possible. But um, first, actually, let me preface this by saying that, yeah, I identified as trans man, maybe a little non binary, and I took hormones on and off for about 5 years while living in DC. And now I have been on the other end, detransitioned, if you will, for about 3+ years. So that's time flies. But I grew up in Northern California in a fairly average household that ended up becoming a broken family around the time of like third grade ish. My parents divorced, and I have an older sister, so I'm the youngest. It was a family of four. Um, when my parents divorced, it just turned our like normal average family life into complete turmoil, if you will. And my mom struggled with alcoholism and drug abuse after that. She had a really hard time reconciling her own life after the divorce because she had always just dreamed of being a stay at home mom, a wife, and having a family of her own because she came from a very broken household of her own. So her dreams in that time kind of crumbled and she succumbed to addiction. And so for my sister and I, that just it put us in a very like unstable. If anybody's ever dealt with a parent who has addiction, um, you'll know that it's very confusing on a child too, because a lot of times addicts like to hide what's going on. So you just feel like really lost a lot of the time. And that's how I felt a lot growing up. Um, I was a very sensitive child as well. I think you talked about yourself that way as well, having, intense emotions, also artistic and creative. I was very musical, um, musically inclined, uh, and stubborn. That's another word that uh, I was a very stubborn child. My parents would agree, and I still am to some extent. And that'll be a common theme in my story. I think is my stubbornness leading me to places. So I will jump forward actually to high school. Um, by that time, Child Protective Services had actually stepped in and removed my sister and I from my mom's care. And I lived with my dad and my stepmom from then on. Um, and high school was a really difficult time for me. I had to try and like let go of the past and the like I as much as it was a difficult environment with my mom, I loved her very much. So being removed from her, that was really hard. And it took me a long time to get over that. Um, so in high school, I was, dealing with that. And it came out as like anxiety, a lot of anxiety and depression. Um, and my dad really did his best to try and help me through that. Um, the first therapist I had actually gone to was way back in third grade. Um, and my sister and I just decided, like, don't tell the therapist anything that's going on, tell them we're fine. And they're like, okay, you're fine. Um, and then in high school, I started going into therapy again. I was in a lot of DBT groups. And around sophomore year, I went to my first like outpatient treatment facility. And I remember being there, and one day they're calling up all the kids to get their medication that they're taking, and they call my name, and I'm like, I don't take medication. And they're like, oh, well, the doctor prescribed you Zoloft, so you can either take it or you don't have to take it. And I remember standing there in that moment thinking, like, is this the right thing to do? Should I take the Zoloft? Will it help me? Um, and I ended up taking it. And from then till my senior year, I was like on and off various uh, SSRIs and like Seroquel is like a antipsychotic or something. Different cocktails that they try and give you to help you with what's going on. So it was a very difficult time. I was not able to be like a real student like the other high schoolers. I was really just focused on my own, everything that was going on in my mind. And I also remember at this time feeling like a different state of consciousness, even feeling like maybe out of body experiences somewhat, feeling like not connected with my body, feeling, and I don't know if this is also just something about being a teenager and feeling like I don't know. There's a lot of different feelings when you're a young adult, young woman. You're going through puberty and it's changing you. I don't know how other people experienced that, but for me, there was a lot of ups and downs, and I almost felt at times like I was bipolar. I I would look that up online, like what is it like to be bipolar? Am I bipolar? Is this what I'm going through? Is that what I'm going through?
I did the same thing with the
And
bipolar.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think I was. I think that it was just a young adult in turmoil kind of thing. But I ended up finishing high school at a continuation type high school um, for teenagers and children who have behavioral health uh, issues, which sounds like it could have been a really good place for somebody like me, but um, it really was not for a lot of reasons. It was a middle and high school combined. So I was going in as like a junior in high school and now having to go into classes with like middle schoolers who were like bullying me. And there was only like 6 of us actually. It was really small school. It was a very strange environment. And so I petitioned the school board to let me graduate early because it was not helping my mental health. It was actually probably actively hurting it. And they agreed. And that felt like a really big win for me. And after 4 years of like really struggling in high school and struggling with my mental health, I felt like a sense of freedom. It was really great. And I didn't feel like pursuing college yet. Um, I wasn't like educationally inclined. So I was really interested in like environmental science, environmental activism, farming, organic agriculture. Um, so I ended up looking at something called woofing. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, WWOOFing is the worldwide organization for organic farming. And you can go online and you can find a farm to live at and work at. Um, and this is related, I promise. I went onto this farm in New Hampshire directly after high school, and it was going to be for a 2-month long farm stay.
Were you already 18 at that point, or were you younger
Yeah,
because you graduated high school early?
I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I had to have parental permission,
Mm,
which they said that was okay.
mm,
So yeah, I was 17 at the time. And I have to mention too that during high school I smoked a lot of weed.
mm,
um, I got into that around 14.
mm. I'm curious
Um,
also if you could, like, paint a little bit more of a
yeah.
picture of what you were like as a teenager, like, because you said, you were really depressed
Oh
and
yeah.
anxious, like, what did that
Yeah.
look like every day? How did you dress? Like, what did you look like? Were you still doing things that you
Yeah.
loved, or were you just really, like, out of it? How was that?
I looked very different depending on the month even. Because identity was something that I did struggle with. And it wasn't necessarily related to my gender yet, um, but I dyed my hair a lot. I cut it a lot as well. I cut it very short before I identified any sort of way. Um, I I didn't shave my legs. I didn't shave my armpits. I was a very like hippie in
I was
certain
the
senses,
same way.
pot smoker, hippie girl. um, But I slept a lot. I remember I would go home from school and I would fall asleep and I would sleep until the next day. And part of that was probably the medications. I remember a lot of medications made me really tired. And then also, I just felt better being asleep a lot of times. So, um, yeah. Uh, I'm a short girl. I'm a very small girl. So I was yeah, always very short. I dressed very differently depending on the month, the year. I tried a lot of different styles out for myself.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. I feel a lot
Yeah.
of similarities between us. I was the same way, like, I
Yeah.
would come home from high school and just fall asleep every single day, just so exhausted. Yeah, I relate to a lot of what you said. I actually just I've been getting chills a few times as you've been speaking.
Yeah, yeah, I found a lot of similarities between our even though our parents seem very different though, because mine were not religious. I did not have a religious upbringing. I didn't have a conservative upbringing. My parents are very my dad's very liberal, and they're very much like want you to be exactly who you are and be happy, you know. I also yes, I smoked a lot of weed, and going on this farm trip was gonna be the first time where I was gonna have a break from weed because I didn't know where I would get it on the farm. Um, and I would say I was a little bit, like, addicted to it. I like to smoke a lot, and when I didn't have it, I wanted to get it. So, yeah, it did feel like a little bit of an addiction, but, going to this farm, it would be my first time without it, and, I also think I stopped taking my medication when I went, on the farm, but I felt really good. Actually, I felt, like, really clear-headed, and I felt a lot of my depression and anxiety go away, and right before I went to the farm, I actually visited family who lived in the same state, and so I spent some close time with family, and they saw me right before my farm trip, um and so now on the farm, I worked side by side every day with the farm manager. And the farm owner, he wasn't really around. It was really just like me, the farm manager, and his kids sometimes here and there worked on the farm. And I was having a great time. Um, and one night, the farm manager came out to me as transgender. So this is my first experience being very intimately close with somebody who's transgender. I actually have had friends who are transgender before, but we didn't get to speak about, like, what that experience was like. And on the farm now, once this manager told me that, she so this person, was born a male and transitioned to be a female, but then actually detransitioned, and detransitioned due to a relationship that was making them wanted them to detransition, wanted her to detransition. And now she has retransitioned. Um, but at the time on the farm, she was in a detransitioned state and she was very uncomfortable and wanted to start her transition again. So we talked a lot about all of those feelings. And I was very supportive of her and very curious. And as soon as she told me about it, literally as soon as I heard about this, it like sparked a fire inside me to research and go down these rabbit holes of like what are these feelings like, and do I do I have these feelings inside of myself, and like is that what has been causing so much of this turmoil that I had been going through for these years, and um going back to like my me having identity issues in high school. I'm like started connecting certain dots and connecting the dots of me having shaved my hair and not shaved my legs, and maybe making a lot of like surface level connections, but emotionally and mentally, it was like a very strong, fiery feeling of like, this is something that I want to pursue.
Wow. It's super interesting well, there's many interesting parts about
Yeah.
that, but, it's interesting that the person who kind of sparked that was a trans woman, and then that has sort of inspired you to pursue the trans man route. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She's a lovely person. Um, we we talked a lot. We spent, like, every day for 2 months together, and within those 2 months, though, so I would consider myself as having rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is something that is political. People don't agree with that being, like, a legitimate thing, but it's what I personally experienced. And I don't wanna put that on anybody else and say that that's the norm, um, but it absolutely aligns with what I felt. Like, um, it came on quickly, and then I felt very dysphoric in my body. I felt, like pursuing hormones, especially, I felt like that was my answer. And I remember you saying that you felt very excited, um, to pursue this as well. It was a very exciting feeling for me too. It was like, an answer to my prayers, if you will.
Hmm. Yes, definitely can relate.
I called my parents while I was on the farm and I told them that, "Hey, mom and dad, actually, I'm transgender, and my new name is Oliver, and I want to go by that." And they were very shocked. And I think my mom was more shocked. But my relationship with my mom, it wasn't close because we had been taken away from her. I didn't live with her. I hadn't lived with her for years. Um, and so it's really like what my dad and stepmom said that was going to maybe be more important. But like, again, I'm a very stubborn person, so I was gonna do what I was gonna do, and I was almost 18 anyways. So overall, my family was actually very accepting of me, and like my sister, for example, she never questioned why I wanted to do this, or why one day I was happy being Sophie and one day I wasn't. Um, but I had an aunt and an uncle on either side of my family who like questioned me actually pretty gently. Um, and I was very like repulsed by that. I think as many people who are beginning their transition are, like, it felt very hurtful for somebody to question that, even though this was something that was new to me. It felt precious. It felt like, um I didn't want anybody to like poke through this illusion maybe that I was creating for myself. I didn't want to have to fight for myself, or fight people on it. I just wanted to be able to do what I was going to do, which was get hormones and transition.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that too. Um, I'm curious, like, what do you think was going on inside of yourself for in that 2-month period to suddenly develop gender dysphoria and to be
Yeah.
so convinced that it was true and that you were actually transgender? What was happening?
Well, I felt like I was finally finding myself. I have to say that now as a 20, what am I, 20, turning 28-year-old, I can look back on my childhood and everything and say, oh, wow, all of my anxiety and depression, it really was caused by like, um, my unstable family structure and other experiences that I don't have to get into, but that were involved with like my mom's alcoholism and drug abuse. And now I can put all the pieces together. But back then, I was still trying to put everything together myself. Um, so yeah, I was quickly convinced that that this felt right and that this answered like a lot of questions that I still had about myself. and I blamed myself at that point um, for all of my struggles. Um, so this was like a good answer and a solution. Um, and becoming 18, becoming a young adult, trying to find my purpose, trying to find my way. Um, and I would just stay up all night at the farm on YouTube watching transition stories and listening to people's voices pre-transition and post-transition. And I thought that like it was very empowering, and I thought that this would give me um, strength and power, um, and like the confidence that I was lacking. And I would look at myself in the mirror. I remember like looking at my face in the mirror and trying to make it look more masculine with my hands or with different facial features, or sorry, like expressions, and thinking, yeah, I would look good, or you know, yeah, this looks right, and starting to bind my chest and look at my flat chest and thinking, oh wow, this looks really good. I'm starting to feel more confident. I'm feeling comfortable. I've really found myself. Um, wow, so and I was convinced. I think I've done this at different points in my life where I've convinced myself of something. Um, and it is quick, and it's like again with the like bipolar stuff when I was younger, thinking, "Am I bipolar?" And at a time, I think I had convinced myself, "Yeah, I think I am a bipolar person," and now I have to. I'm already in therapy. This is what it's like. Yes, this is me. So, um, yeah, that's kind of what was going through my head, and again, just going back to like having out of body experiences and stuff. I actually felt really like in my body in a way during all of that, and I think part of it was also just maturing, and um I don't know, but that's what set my course towards transition.
Yeah, I definitely just keep relating so much to your story. I think too, like part of what I think made us both feel so convinced that it was true was that we went online on YouTube and other people were saying transitioning solved my problems. And so it's like you believe that it's true because other people are saying that it's true. So yeah, that's part of it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and I was very quickly meeting people in real life too, other people. Um one of the first people I met actually, uh while I was still on the farm, and he was working at another farm, and this is actually pretty amazing. Um we met each other. He wanted to transition to be a woman. I wanted to transition to be a man. Um, he actually became my first roommate when I moved to DC, and I moved to DC because my dad kicked me out. And not because I was transgender, but because he was just kind of fed up with all of, my. He tried really hard to help me when I was in high school, and uh, I was a hard child to live with because of everything I was going through. So um, him and my stepmom gave me a little push, and I ended up moving to DC with this person, and we transitioned alongside each other. And now we have both detransitioned. Um, but actually, when we were detransitioning, we we're still great friends, but we weren't talking much at the time. We were just kind of we're in different states. We're doing different things. Um, but I find that pretty I don't know, amazing that we both transitioned and detransitioned together. It's like our consciousnesses, if you will, we're on a similar path or journey.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
actually, he is expecting his first child any day now with his wife. So, yeah, again, a similar path because I have a 1.5-year-old daughter now. I think I jumped around a little bit because in between the farm and DC, I did go back home to California for a few months. And during those months, I tried to get hormones through Kaiser, which is a little bit of a difficult. It's not a. It's not a. It's not the quickest process that you could go through. They do require you to have a little bit of gender therapy and get like a letter of some sorts. And I was going through that, and I remember the therapist actually being a little bit like apprehensive with me, and I was like so mad about that. And I was taking a bus and a train to maybe like two buses and a train to get to this therapist because you had to go into the city, and I live outside the city, and I didn't have a car, so I was doing a lot to get to those appointments and back. And I think he did end up writing me a letter, but then I moved to DC, and when I got there, they're like, "Well, your letter is invalid because that was for Kaiser over there. You gotta get new healthcare here." Um, so I ended up going to Whitman Walker Health. Uh,
Me too.
okay. I was I was wondering, it's a yeah, common, I'd say common over there to get your hormones through Whitman Walker Health. Um I remember my doctor really clearly. He was really nice, very friendly, but he didn't know me at all. He only knew who I was presenting myself to him as, which at that point it really wasn't my true self. I was hiding all of my mental history and everything, and just present I was only presenting him with the gender dysphoria that I was experiencing without giving him like the context. But I don't even know if that would be that important. Who's to say? But I don't know about your experience with their clinic, but I got hormones very quickly through Whitman Walker Health,
Yep.
which I was very happy about.
Yep. Same.
they,
Same. Yeah.
yeah,
Super, super
I
easy.
think
Like just like a couple appointments, I think. What was the like month and year of when you were doing that?
all of it's kind of blurry to me, honestly. It had to be around 2015.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that was a couple years
It
before
had
me.
to okay, yeah, near the end of 2015, yeah,
Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah, we
and so I
really have
was
so much
18
overlap.
now at the time.
You were 18.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
I was 18 now, yeah, and I got a job at a trans-owned and operated company,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I won't name. I signed an NDA, but I don't know if it's void by now, but I have signed NDAs. But I worked for the community. I worked with and for the community. And I really immersed myself in the community. And I was not happy. I was struggling. I was struggling very badly, actually. My mental health issues, yeah, they returned, and part of that, I will have to say, was being kicked out by my dad. It felt like just another broken wound after, you know, it's like, "Oh, my whole family's torn apart. My sister's in one state now. My mom, she was having horrible health issues at the time. She was actually just yeah, really on the brink of death, in a hospital having surgeries, um, because her drug and alcohol dependence had gone on for several years now, a decade or so. And it was wearing on her body. And now my dad, my only kind of somewhat support system, I felt like I was kicked out. Maybe he felt like he gently pushed me out of the nest, but, you know, um, and I isolated myself far away. So, I just felt, like, wounded by all of that, again, and I felt very lost in a new city, trying to find new connections, trying to, cure my this gender dysphoria now that I was experiencing. Um, And getting the hormones, yeah, it was exciting. It was like a happy moment in all of this. Um, I I started smoking weed again. Um, I also dealt with a little bit of a dependency with gosh, I'm forgetting the name. It's a pill that a lot of like rappers take it. A lot of people take it for like women take it when they go on airplanes. They say, "Oh, I'll just take my." It's an opioid. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like there's a lot of songs about it.
I do, but I can't think of the name right now either.
Somebody will know what I'm talking about. It's an opioid. Um, and somebody I worked with gave me one. They were actually passing them around at that workplace because a lot of us dealt with mental health issues, and some people were prescribed certain things for Adderall or sorry, yeah, Adderall. I took somebody's Adderall too during this time. They would pass them around and among other things, but yeah, we were all just kind of like spiraling in different ways, and so those are some of the things that I was doing in DC was experimenting with different pills. And I had a long term partner over there, though, actually for like 5 years. And he was very supportive and helped me stop doing some of those destructive behaviors, and was very supportive of my transition. And I think he identifies as non binary now. But yeah, so my depression and anxiety had kind of returned, and this time I wasn't gonna go towards therapy, and I was really just hoping that like this transition would really just help me through it. And in some ways, my life was very stable out there. The job provided me a lot of stability because I had to go to an office every day. And then my home life became pretty stable with this partner. We kind of, we really cohabitated well together, and I started like learning how to cook and just do like normal adult things. And I always felt a bit rushed into adulthood because my other peers had gone to college and I started working by the time I was like 16. But yeah, so again, there was a kind of partially very chaotic life that I was experiencing, and also a very stable life. And as far as the hormones go, I was starting to see certain changes, and I was I was happy about those. They were like different milestone markers that you kind of want to see when you're taking testosterone, um, and they felt like accomplishing goals. And uh, I always lowered my voice too because the hormones weren't doing it quite enough for me. So I remember that I constantly spoke even lower than like I could have, and I actually hated the feeling that I knew my voice was still higher, and I hated feeling like I was, like, battling that. I really hated anything that reminded me, that I was, like, a woman still, and I tried to push that away as much as possible. It it gave me, intense anxiety to to have that, like, dichotomy within myself, and, a lot of men, trans men, masculine people are okay with the feminine sides of themselves and are actually happy with the internal balance between like their masculine and feminine energies or whatever. But for me, it was more of like an internal battle of me trying to like push down and suppress the feminine energy inside because it felt like a threat to Oliver, who I was living as. It felt yeah, threatening to that identity.
Wow. How did you take your hormones?
I opted for gel, which seems to be a more mellow testosterone. It wasn't as intense, as far as like the changes like would happen slower. I tried injections for a few months, but I've always been incredibly needle phobic. So that was a big issue for me was needles. And I had other trans friends do it for me. But even then it was a big, big, big issue. I remember my friend giving me bong hits before doing the injection to try and calm me down. So to paint you a little picture in a grungy little house.
I can see the picture very clearly. I feel like I was there, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah, I get it. I was super needle phobic too, but I only did the injections and I was like, this is what I will overcome my needle phobia
Yeah.
for because this is what I really want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
The
also
gel was
curious.
stinky, I've gotta
It was
say. It was
stinky.
really stinky. It was stinky, and, I remember one person telling me that, I reminded them of, like, the smell of an old man because sometimes old men have to go on this gel. That's what it was made for, is old men who are dealing with low hormone balances, and so they have to take the gel, and it leaves you with a very distinct smell.
Wow. Yeah. So I transitioned alongside a partner, which I realize I don't think I even talked about this when I shared my story, but I was dating somebody who was also transitioning to male, and we like basically transitioned together. And I would do my shots, and he would do the gel. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, I don't remember it being smelly, but I do remember like he wasn't supposed to touch anybody for a while after putting it on because
That's right.
it could rub off on
Yeah.
somebody else. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you have to be careful about that. You also have to wait to put your clothes on because it'll stick to the clothes. You have to let it completely dry. And, anyways, yeah. So I did that, and I did it on and off. Actually, there were times when I would go off it because I was not great with my money. I still didn't have a car. I dealt with there's a word that people who have ADHD they use this word, and it's about like task completion and like struggling to complete important tasks. And I was dealing with that a bit. I'm forgetting what the word is, but I was dealing with that. So when it would come time to like pick up my prescription, it was very hard to do certain basic tasks, such as like you know um, basic hygiene for myself too. That was something I struggled with at certain times. Um, or cleaning up around the house. These things that now that I'm 28 and I'm a mom, I spend a lot of my time doing. But yeah, back then I really struggled to do the very most basic tasks. And so sometimes that would interfere with me picking up my prescription. And I think other trans people can relate to that too, who have like comorbidities with ADHD and stuff, and struggling to get to the doctor when you need to. Um, and then there was a little birdie, a little something in the back of my head that was saying, "Do you want to keep taking testosterone? Like, is this making you happy? Like, are we getting happier? Are we seeing the results? Because when I started this, it was like I said, this is my answer. So sometimes I would question myself and like, is this really the answer? Because sometimes I feel quite miserable still and in my body, and sometimes I feel like my body's never going to be um, a home for myself or feel comfortable. And what am I going to have to do to get there? Am I going to have to complete all of the surgeries and do this for my whole life, or will I feel like I'm living a lie? I started having these thoughts because of that internal battle where I was pushing down my feminine side. It was really hard to do every day. Um, and I don't think every person, like I said, I don't think every person battles with it quite like that. But yeah, I don't think everybody sees femininity and masculinity in the same ways, and but for me it was hard to feel like I was repressing myself in certain ways, and that's what started to lead me to the thought processes of detransition.
Mm.
Um,
So, so how long in total did you live as Oliver, and what steps did you end up taking? So you did the hormones. Did you also do any legal things, and did you do any surgeries?
no, so okay, so I to answer your first question, I lived as Oliver for about 5 years. Um, I socially transitioned for about a year before hormones. Um, and then I didn't take any other steps besides hormones, although Whitman Walker had set me up with a therapist to start discussing top surgery. Although I will say that I had told my doctor there that I wasn't interested, or at least that I didn't feel sure that I was interested, which is kind of like, I don't really want to pursue top surgery, I don't think, because I was feeling so mixed up inside myself that I was like, if I do top surgery, at least I need to wait until I'm more certain. There's a part of me that really did want to do it too, because I saw other people doing it too, and I saw it making them happy, and I again thought like, will that do that for me too? And maybe I won't have to like feel so repressed if I have top surgery, because that's something that I'm like repressing, or um but they set me up with a therapist anyways, even though I like didn't really want to. And I had a few um therapy sessions, and then I just like ghosted the therapist. So I didn't move forward with anything. Um and so finally, after, like 5 years of all of this, my grandmother passed away, actually. So this is what happened. My mom's mom passed away, and my dad's mom passed away within a few months of each other. After my grandmother's passed away, I decided to take the Amtrak from DC to California to come visit my mom, who was dealing with my grandmother's estate. She had to plan like a funeral, and she just needed a lot of support, actually. My mom had been living with my grandmother, and my mom found my grandmother when my grandmother passed away. So there was a lot my mom was dealing with. My sister and I wanted to come support her, and we had done a lot of work reconciling our relationship through that time. And my mom was very supportive of me in my transition, and she just wanted to be close, and she just wanted to heal that relationship. So, yeah, I took the Amtrak from DC to California, which is like one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. Looking out of a train, it's like 4 to 5 days long, and you're just looking at wilderness. You pass through some cities too, but it's absolutely beautiful, and it gave me a lot of time to think. It gave me a space away from my normal stress. My job had become increasingly stressful for so many reasons. So it gave me time away from that. Yeah, something really funny was happening on this train too, which, um, maybe this just shows like how wacky I am and how my brain works. But I was studying Spanish through this app, and it was a language exchange app where you're talking to a stranger. And I was talking to a stranger in who lived in Nicaragua, and he was helping me with my Spanish, and I'm helping him with his English, and we would send voice messages back and forth. And I remember him asking me like, "Oliver, why do you sound like a woman?" And that question, like, generally generally would have hurt me pretty badly to hear. Like, why do you sound like a woman? Because I'm trying so hard to be a man, and that would have hurt me. But I kinda understood, like, the cultural differences too of somebody who lived in, like, rural Nicaragua and isn't gonna understand, and I didn't really want to explain everything, and somehow that is important to my detransition story because somehow that, um, like a knife, like, cut through part of this illusion I had been creating for myself because I didn't want to explain myself and and it was something that, like, was, in a sense, fabricated. So that was actually like the start of it. And then being on that train, being away from everything, and then going home to the town that I had originally grew up in, being with my mom and my sister, and starting to retie these bonds. Um, there was something in me that finally felt that I was able to I didn't have to keep hiding Sophie. I didn't have to keep hiding myself, and I didn't have to keep repressing myself. Um, and as soon as it felt like another consciousness shift. It felt like a whole, like my world had literally been turned upside down. But this time, I actually finally felt free. When I felt free on the farm for the first time, when I had left school, when I had left things behind for the first time and I had that first sense of freedom, I locked myself into a new illusion, maybe to protect myself or to try and do what was right for myself. But this second like awakening, if you will, um, it I like broke the spell, and honestly, since then, since that time, with my mom, like my anxiety, my depression, everything has been gone. I actually just feel like a very happy person on a day to day level. It's very beautiful. So I think that my story comes full circle finally after all of this. And we can talk a little bit more about the detransition, but that was basically the big push that pushed my mind into this new era of acceptance and here we are today.
Wow. I need to blow my nose because I got a little teary-eyed. Wow. That's really beautiful. I can
Thank you.
I was just picturing you so clearly on that train ride, like this train ride across the country, which is interesting because my story also involves a journey across the country
It
from
does.
DC to Las Vegas in my case, but just
Yes.
yeah, there's so much clarity in a journey like that and in traveling, like, it's like
Yeah.
and in physically changing your location and just being in a completely different place, like, you're like, "Oh,
Yes.
that whole life that I was living there, like, it doesn't have to matter," like, almost.
It doesn't have to matter. That is exactly it. You took the words right out of my mouth. It doesn't have to exist anymore. It's like I did start to feel confined to the reality I had created for myself, which at the start I genuinely thought it was going to be good for myself. And when I realized it wasn't, that was maybe a year or two in, and I was repressing, repressing, repressing. But I had to live my life. How can I not live my life? And then, just as you said, the journey it shows you that you don't have to. You can try again, start again. And I had to go back to DC after being in California for 2 months. And I had to go back, and I just went back for a month or two. And my dad, he was so helpful. He got me a long term Airbnb so that I could leave leave my partner, which that was hard because he's a really good person, and I left him abruptly because I had to get out of this life completely. There was no way that I could become Sophie and be myself and still be um with him. Um I had to move on. So my dad got me an Airbnb. I took like 2 bags of things. I took like a guitar and something else and um tied up some odd loose ends, and then I moved in to my grandma's old house with my mom, which is where I live today with my husband, my daughter, and my mom. Um, and being in that long-term Airbnb, I started being able to grow my hair out and buy women's clothing. And uh, it still took me a little while to want to go by Sophie. That
Mm,
the name still felt like hurt. There was still some hurt wrapped up in that, um, and it felt awkward to to hear it. But now today, I'm totally happy with it. I'm totally um, fine with it. And during my first few years of detransition, I didn't think about my transition or detransition at all. I just kind of tried to live authentically and happily. And so now I'm really grateful that you've provided me the opportunity to kind of like uh, share my story because after 3 years, I feel ready to do that. And I think that stories like ours are very important because, again, your story, my story, and everybody's story is going to be different. It's going to have different perspectives, different things that we can offer somebody who's maybe curious about detransitioning, maybe curious about transitioning. Um, and I don't think anybody can say what's going to be right for somebody else, but all we can do is really share our stories, right? And say where we came from. So,
mm,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, your story is so beautiful, and you have such a grounded and loving and honest perspective on it all, which is why I really wanted to
Thanks.
talk to you. And I think the the similarities between our stories and our just the ways in which our paths cross, but didn't quite cross actually, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean. It's just so interesting. Yeah, I'm curious, like, what is your perspective on so like me, it sounds like the beginning of your adulthood was you living as Oliver. How do you feel
Yes.
about that period of your life now? Like, what is your perspective on that, on what you went through? Do you have a deeper understanding of why you had to go through that?
Yeah, when I first came out of that experience, um, I I did take it as like, well, you know what? I just had to go through that to be where I am today, right? Like, that's just my journey, right? Like, I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm not going to blame myself. I'm not going to blame anybody else because I really want to enjoy life now. Now that I feel like I'm on a level headed, like, I just want to um, not place blame or feel like, oh, woe is me, or feel like I mutilated my body. And I didn't have a surgery, of course, but I do have certain changes in my body that are not going to reverse themselves. Um, and so today, a lot of people, nobody would really ever know what I went through. Um, I've told uh, a few of my friends here in town that I've made what I've gone through, and they were shocked. But I know, and I know that my voice is lower than it would have been if I had never gone through the hormones. And something I mentioned at the start of this is that I was a singer, and I played guitar and I sang, and people would tell me I had a beautiful voice. And um, today I'm stuck in this range that's neither high nor low, and it's not really great for singing. And I feel sad about it. So that's one of the things that it's left me with. that sometimes I feel sad about or almost regretful. I feel, man, I wish. What would have stopped me? That's something people ask me too. What would have stopped you from all of this? And I think honestly, I just needed a lot more support at home that I wasn't able to get in certain ways. And also, I think that I was given far too much internet access at far too young an
Yes.
age. Like we're talking, middle school, which is normal now. But I think those things are pretty detrimental to young girls' mental health. And um, so, to your question about starting your young adulthood as the opposite gender when that's like not correct for you, um, I'm just kind of at peace with it. I don't feel like there's a lot of things I missed out on in life. I didn't get to go to a prom. I didn't get to do a lot of quote unquote normal things because I was already living like a adjacent lifestyles, having to go into psychiatric hospitals at a young age and stuff. So, um, yeah, I just try and not be regretful and just try and see it again like as a journey. And who I was, Oliver, taught me a lot of lessons about life. And yeah.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Do you keep pictures from that time? Do you ever look at them?
Yes. um, Yeah, actually, my mom wanted to get one, like, blown up on the wall because she was picking out different, pictures for our wall, and my mom and my sister and we don't get together a lot because my sister's in the Navy, and one of
Uh,
the pictures she wanted to put in the wall was, like, I was still in my transition, and I'm like, "Look, we can find a different one," but, I have deleted a lot of the pictures, but I do still have some because if you go into like messages between you and somebody else, you can always look at the pictures you've sent each other. So that's where a lot of old pictures are stored. Like I've deleted them from my social media, but within messages between people, I can go back and find them sometimes. And I do look at them sometimes. And yeah, I feel a bit sad for myself back then. Um, just remembering like how brokenhearted I was and lost.
yeah, I can relate to that, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, how is your mom now, by the way?
Oh, yeah. I did want to touch upon that too, because she'll probably watch this. And she's great. Yeah, we live together. She lives by Alcoholics Anonymous. She is a big part of the not so anonymous, but she doesn't mind that I share about this. But yeah, she Alcoholics Anonymous. It took a long time for it to work for her. She tried and tried and tried, um, and finally it worked for her. And she's been sober now for a number of years, and she's just she's an amazing person. I feel really sorry for everything that she had to endure that led her to everything that she went through during my early childhood. Um, and so her story is a beautiful story of recovery as well, and finding the other side and finding what a beautiful, stable life you can eventually have. And sometimes it takes many years. And she is, you know, quite a lot older than me when she kind of came to her stability in life. But she's doing great now. Yeah, thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, and it's beautiful how your whole family
Yeah,
is healing together, and now you have your
yeah,
little one too in the picture, and she's
yeah,
gonna grow up in this environment where her mom and her grandma are all like everyone's together, and
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
really beautiful.
I think that that's, like, what we all want, right? Is, like, we're all trying to heal the wounds from our past, and, especially within the transgender community, I just like, so many of my friends have gone through, a lot, a lot of different traumas, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's why they're transgender. I think that that's a conclusion that's drawn a lot of times, and maybe for me that was the case, but yeah, there's a lot that we go through as people in general, and we're all just trying to do better, right, than the generations before us. And but I actually wanted to ask you too, because this is something that people ask me: is there anything that anybody could have said to you when you were first starting your transition that would have helped you realize that it wasn't the right thing for you?
Mm, I've thought about that. I think it's I think I really needed support too, and I needed somebody who could actually see me for who I was, see through the stubbornness, see through the anger, see through the hurt, and just like love me for me. And that might have meant even loving the fact that I wanted to transition, because like that was my struggle with my parents, was that um, I already felt so hurt and misunderstood by them. And then when I came out to them and said I'm going to transition, and they really didn't want me to do that. I was like, I took that as
Yeah,
a like, oh, you don't really love me then, because
exactly. Yep.
they were trying to stop me, you know. And so then I was really on my own. Like I had nobody for a while, and then I would seek out
Yes.
therapists and things like that, and the therapists would just validate whatever I wanted, basically. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, nobody was there for for me in the ways that I really needed. So, I mean, honestly, if I could have met someone who's like myself now, and like if I had met my older self now, I could have helped me.
That's right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so that's like that is what I
Yes.
desire to do, like to help I would love to, work with younger people and help by being that person who can see them and love them and just hold them for wherever they are on their journey. Um,
Yeah.
Basically, I want to be the person that I needed when I was that age.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. I think there's also an aspect that should just be noted, but I don't think we can really get into it because it deserves hours and hours of discussion. Is like there's cultural things to this too, like that young women go through, um, body image issues that young and I dealt with some anorexia and stuff like that. Trying to control your body. So, this is another way of trying to control your body, and trying to find comfort. And so, yeah, there's a lot culturally that young women have to go through. And I just want to say for myself, like when I was young and I was, like I said, a small girl, I was always called a very cute girl. I was always, very cutesy small girl, but I was never a beautiful woman. And like you said, I wasn't really allowed to grow into a young woman because I changed myself before I could even see myself. But when you're at the age of even 14 and 15, um, girls are doing their makeup, girls are doing this and that. And I didn't feel like I was living up to those expectations of being a beautiful woman because I was a child. So that's an issue too that I think that just should be noted as and that was something that probably affected me and my psyche, and I know it affects young women trying to live to a certain expectation, and we don't fit that expectation for so many reasons. Um, Self-expression is just not everybody's gonna want to be the same way, and that's okay. But that's something that you kind of have to learn with. with age. That's something that sometimes takes a little bit of time to fully understand.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of things that girls and women go through in this world, and it's not fair. It's not right. And I was so angry about that when I was young. Um, and I was right to be angry
Yeah.
about that. But I didn't know how to deal with it inside of myself. And now I know that trying to become a man was basically, from in my perspective, sort of like succumbing to the societal expectations of what women are supposed to be, because I was a bold and confident and fiery young woman. And I thought, I'm not allowed to be these things as a woman. So I'm going to try to change myself. And
Mm.
so now, actually, I think it's a really
Mhm.
beautiful and powerful thing to say, no, I'm going to be myself as myself. And I'm going to show an example to the younger women of this world what we can be. You don't have to inject yourself with hormones. You don't have to cut off your body parts, like, to be free to be yourself. We do need to change the world, definitely, but we gotta
Yeah.
do that by being strong inside of ourselves. Um, which also brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. What does it mean to you now to
Yeah.
be a woman?
Oh, man. Oh, what is a woman? The Have you heard of Matt Walsh?
Yes,
The
yes.
What is a Woman? I haven't watched that, but, oh, man. Well, okay, we can say that I was born a woman, so therefore I am a woman. But that's so, scientific and biological, and that lacks feeling, and clearly we're talking about identity here. We're not talking about um, biology, because this is an identity crisis that I was going through. This is an identity thing. So now me being able to identify with being a woman, I mean, it's an alignment of the biology and the identity for me, right? I just I wake up and I feel comfort and content in how I look. I mean, not always. Sometimes I'm not. I wish I could have different hair or whatever, but it's not related to gender. I wake up and I don't think about those things anymore, which it used to take up my whole mental psyche from morning to night. So what does it mean to be a woman for me? It's just like well, t- motherhood actually is a big part of it for me. Um, oh my gosh, and I don't know how I didn't mention this, but like motherhood was actually another aspect of my detransition, because I when I turned like 24, 25, and my brain fully developed, suddenly something inside myself was like, wait, I want children. I want to raise children. Something that I never wanted before, because I was a child myself and I had so much to you know unpack before I could even consider that. Suddenly I found myself wanting children, and in my mind's eye I saw myself as a mother, and that was just another one of those things that broke through the illusion I created for myself, because I actually found it ridiculous to think of myself as a father. I felt, it just didn't make sense to me. As much as like I was upholding this identity for myself, that was just kind of like that was a line for me in my mind, where when I envisioned myself nurturing my baby, um, I just envisioned myself as a mother, and I'm like, okay, how do I reconcile that? And so all of that was part of the culmination of me detransitioning. And so motherhood is a big part of my personal being a woman, being a nurturer, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom. Now I work, side jobs, but I always take my daughter with me, to if I'm making any income. So I am a stay-at-home mom. My day revolves around my beautiful daughter, and being a mother, and I'm very lucky, very grateful. that I was able to, nurse my daughter as well, to breastfeed her, and, like, that, I think is just, like, um, it's that's very womanly. That's what being a woman is, and not that everybody has to do that. I know so many women who are happy to not have children, and but for me,
Mm,
that's a
mm.
big part of it.
That is so beautiful. I'm so happy for you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have one last question. So we've both talked about like how we both want to share our stories in a way that is accessible and non-judgmental. And that's the idea behind the bridge is sharing stories from the heart because, well, that's just your story and this is my story, and we're all just here to listen and learn from each other. Um, so I guess the question is like, what is your message to the people?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, get offline. That's my message to everybody. I think it is that we need to put the phone
Mm,
down, grandpa, delete Facebook, um, spend some time outside, go on a train, reconnect
mm,
with nature. Um, but maybe
yes.
be careful about which farms you're going on. Um, and genuinely, I think that the internet is very, very unhealthy place for everybody. Actually, it's an amazing tool. We all know that. You can learn so much online, but you can also very easily um, sink yourself into microcosms that are not healthy. And I don't just mean the LGBT community. I don't mean that, and I don't mean just right wing politics. I don't mean that. I also mean, for example, um, when I was very young, like watching Skins UK and learning about anorexia and like wanting to like be like Effie and you know what I mean? I don't know if you know anything about Skins UK, Tumblr era. Some people will definitely resonate with this. Tumblr era, Tumblr for specifically like was so toxic. And so I think that for parents, we need to be very, very careful about how much access and what kind of access that our children have. And then also for ourselves, for as adults too, because adults can get wrapped up in fake news or, just different things here and there. My parents were aware of certain dangers online, but they had no idea what they were dealing with because it was the early 2000s. And now we have a lot more information. So we need to be smart with that information and protect our children and protect ourselves from the harm that can be caused by too much internet access. And then just like be involved in our everyday communities. You know what I mean? Um, and bridge these gaps, like you're saying. Like let's bridge these gaps. Like, do you know about Jubilee and their whole like they pit two sides against each other? That's not bridging the gap. You know what I mean? Like you're bringing two very different views and pitting them, and it's just creating more hate towards each other. And so, like, um, that's something we need to do something about that. We need to end Jubilee. um, Not exactly, but like we need more bridges. And I don't know exactly how that's going to be done.
Well, I think
Uh,
it does start with just talking about it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's funny because I can get sucked into those videos sometimes.
yeah.
Because
I like
ever
watching
since
them too.
ever since I like started, well, detransitioning, I like started looking up detransitioner videos and stuff, which then
hmm
then my YouTube algorithm thinks that I want that content, which I mean, I am interested in it, but
Yes.
also there's, like, a lot of political stuff and a lot of divisive stuff, basically, which
Yeah.
I'm curious about. I'm curious to hear what the larger conversation is going on, and I am learning and observing how people are talking about this topic, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
interested in joining in the conversation in my own way.
I think there's just a lot of bold accusations too, and a lot of bold statements from both sides. Like one side, the trans affirming side, is that it's all or nothing, and there's no room for people like us to. But I didn't create any room for questioning myself either. So I was part of that. Um, but then on the other hand, you have people claiming like all trans people were like sexually abused or like it's a fetish or stuff like that, which just doesn't track in my experience. Like, um, so there's misunderstandings. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and I know that it's probably some detransitioners' experiences that they did have sexual abuse in their childhood, and that caused issues and identity and gender issues. Um, but we have to stop relating like one person's experience to everybody and start hearing the different perspectives, and culminate all the different perspectives. Um, and I think that this will help not only detransitioners, but also people who are pursuing transition to have um, comprehensive healthcare. And there really is no healthcare for detransitioners because there was no doctor who wanted to check my hormone levels while I was detransitioning. And I'm not documented anywhere as having detransitioned. So I feel like from a healthcare perspective, that's a failure. If we want to have comprehensive gender care, and I mean I gave birth, and so I have seen OBGYNs, and still there was no like my medical stuff didn't link up, so doctors aren't communicating to really have a good background on somebody. Women Walker Health, they didn't know about my mental health issues. The OBGYN, they didn't know about my transition. Um, these are that's an issue, I feel.
Mm, definitely, yeah. Like, there needs to be more bridges in those areas too, like connecting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so
So,
much for sharing your story.
thank you,
I'm
Maddie.
I'm so grateful to be reconnected with you, and to um, just to be having these conversations.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm really grateful. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Of course, yes. All right. Thank you so much, Sophie.
You're welcome.